teachers who quit, when was the moment you realized that it wasn't for you? No, me but my wife. She was an engineer at a good company on the East Coast. Left because she wanted more rewarding work. Soon after, she is doing clinicals at a school on the rough side of our hometown. She was the kind of student teacher who showed up early, ate lunch with the kids, stayed late, and followed up with parents. Anyway, some months in, she has repeatedly had trouble with some students. They came from troubled homes and brought a lot with them into the class each day. She tried working with them one-on-one, working with the administration, and the parents. More than one set of parents said stop calling. And the administration told her to send them to the principal's office, where they could sit all day, and focus on the good kids. Eventually, the futility set in. She was the only one who cared. Not the kids, administration, other teachers, or even their parents. She finally wore herself out after a couple years with no support at work and no one appreciating her efforts, except me, of course. She's back in aerospace now. I worked in a high-needs behavior class. I got hit, punched, scratched and spat on daily, but every day I went back and did my best for those kids. I was so battered and bruised that my husband wouldn't shop with me anymore because people would stare and sometimes even comment to him about his mistreating me. It was sickening, but I loved my job and every one of those kids. One day was called to the office to talk. It was Christmas time and things weren't great at home, and as anyone with kids knows, the holidays makes children especially high-strung, so things were also wild in the classroom. My boss said, "You seem awfully stressed," and I thought how nice of her to notice, so I agreed that yes, I was struggling. She said, "You have 6 weeks to sort it out or I'll have to let you go." I was crushed. It literally broke me. 6 weeks to get less stressed, how does that even work? I found myself just showing up to show up, and I realized that wasn't fair for me or for the kids. 6 weeks later, I get a call back to the office. I am congratulated on the amazing turnaround and sent back to class. I was baffled. I was more upset and stressed than ever, and they congratulate me? More and more I showed up to work just for the paycheck. One day I just decided screw it, I wasn't a teacher anymore, I was a robot fearful of showing any negativity. I quit that week. Never went back to teaching. Taught at a juvenile delinquent school, when the accusations of children required no proof or consistency, and to be exonerated took divine intervention. When a kid with a violent history a mile wrong swings a stapler at you, gashing your forehead, because he was dared to, then as you restrain him, until help arrives, you hurt his wrist, then your school believes his story that I dropped the N-bomb to him, which caused the outburst. Even though 2 other staff members saw the entire thing. And the school called the police and tried to have me charged for assault. I had a student, maybe 11 or 12, sitting with me and having pizza. I asked how her life was going and she says, "Well, my dad's a drug dealer, so he's always got people coming over to sell or buy drugs or play cards so I can sleep. My mom's dying because she has a hole in her heart and they can't fix it. And I have a boyfriend, but I'm afraid to tell my mom because she'll tell my dad and he'll beat me." Just normal, like this was everyday stuff. So, as a mandatory reporter, I go to my dean of students and tell him all this, and he just gets irritated and goes, "Yeah, but that doesn't excuse her behavior." That's when I knew I was done. When I realized that I was being more micromanaged every year. I expected a lot of oversight when I was a new teacher. I actually had more people watching my every move and every word after a master's degree and 15 years experience. I never had a single complaint. Parents and students loved me, even requested me. Administrators needing to justify their jobs were constantly in my classroom or calling pointless meetings to discuss pointless things. I spent less and less time teaching and more time filing out meaningless forms, responding to emails, and sitting through meetings. I taught high school English for 10 years before finally quitting for the corporate sector. Honestly, it was a lot of small things that built until I realized it wasn't where I wanted to be. The largest of those small things is stifling focus on standardized testing. I lost weeks and weeks to test prep at every grade level. I couldn't teach novels I love teaching because I ran out of time. And those standardized tests are useless, they prove nothing but offer schools a pat on the back for the high-performance results. Which, mind you, do not transfer at all to college success. And too many public schools force the idea of college. Why? Is it because it's for the betterment of the kids? Hell no, it looks good on their graduation statistics. But, there is nothing wrong with not going to college. And I'd tell that to my AP students as much as my kids with the 12 average for the year. You have a 3.8 GPA and want to be a plumber? You go. You be a plumber. duck, you'll make more than the rest of us. I was once told I shouldn't do so many lessons where discussion between students was required. No more Socratic seminars, there had to be more material that could be graded. How duck up is that? I can't encourage discussion in an English literature class because I can't grade the kids on it. And don't even get me started on quantitative versus qualitative. Teachers are being held accountable for students who don't improve regardless of anything else. Jimmy doesn't come to school for 3 months because he's ducking off and then shows back up and fails the midterm? That's on you, buddy. Should have taught him better for the 2 weeks you had him at the start of the year. I eventually got tired of the constant hurdles and stupid state requirements. People said, yeah, but you get a pension. Unions. Summers off. So the duck what? I'm in corporate now and I make $31K more than I did teaching with a yearly bonus and a matching 401K with profit sharing. And bitch, please, I never had a summer off. I worked 2 jobs to make ends meet from June to September. Most teachers do. What kills me is that I loved teaching. I loved my students and I was good at what I did. I was good at encouraging kids to take risks with their learning and I didn't penalize them for making mistakes. That's how you learn. You don't learn shit from multiple choice and you never will. I miss my kids, I miss watching them go from hating a piece to being eager to discuss it. Even my lowest level students could show me something, even if it wasn't on paper. It wasn't my students that killed my love for teaching. And I did have kids throw chairs or get into fights or tell me to duck off, all of that? That was doable. And I did it. The stupid, useless requirements and the idiotic state testing, the abysmal pay for the hours and hours I put in. That killed my love for teaching. And it's killing plenty of other young, passionate educators. I miss my students. I miss everything out teaching, when I was allowed to teach. Now? It's not teaching. If you want to teach, get into higher education or a private school. Do yourself a favor and stay out of public education in the United States. It doesn't exist anymore. 2 16-year-old kids were facing each other. I had the classroom seats in a U-shape, and were silently challenging each other to fight while I was in the middle of a lesson. They suddenly jumped up from their chairs and came at each other with 8-inch knives with me in between them. I was pretty built, having been a stonemason's apprentice in college to help pay my way through, but these kids were both bigger than me. Without thinking I grabbed each by their collars and shouted, "Sit down." I didn't start shaking until that evening. I was done a week later. Edit, thank you for all the upvotes and a special thank you for the gold, kind stranger. I had a 6-year-old pull a knife on me while screaming, "I will kill you." This was the culmination of a lot of various incidents with the same kid. What was most infuriating was the parents claiming they had the sweetest little boy and that we, the school, must be liars for saying otherwise. Eventually he was transferred to a special school after we filed a report on the various incidents. I felt really bad for the kid because when he wasn't freaking out over something he would be the sweetest guy, asking a ton of questions and participating in the activities, but he was highly prone to snapping into hysteria. The incident with the knife happened in this after-school setting where the kids go to play and have fun. Apparently another kid had done something he disliked, so he was kicking and spitting on him when I pulled him away. He ran straight to the drawer and found a little kitchen knife. Due to his size it was pretty easy to wrestle out of his hands though, so no harm done. I guess dealing with shitty parents was what made me change my career. I stopped when my annual review with the new program dean focused on the 10% of student reviews that were negative rather than the 90% that were positive. There are too many aggravations working against teachers. At the least, the administration has to have your back. Where I realized that I couldn't even escape teaching in my dreams, my life was so focused on teaching that every night I had nightmares about it. Followed by the pain I feel in my chest from heart palpitations, my heart would constantly race and then stop altogether. Finally, when on the last day of Thanksgiving break, I realized I had cried every single day because I didn't want to go back to school. I was so low that I had planned my own suicide to get out of teaching, but I figured life had to improve if I just quit teaching, even if I'd be another unemployed millennial statistic. I lasted 15 months. The only thing that makes me feel a little better about the situation is that the retired cop who replaced me only lasted 3, he had been an officer in the same city I was teaching. When the corporate job offered me 3 times the salary and a 12% annual bonus. Now, my kids can afford to go to the college where Dad used to teach. There wasn't one defining moment that made me decide to quit. But after the decision was made, there was a moment that solidified it. There was this kid. To say he wasn't bright is an understatement. He probably should have been diagnosed at some point as special education, but never was. He was also an asshole. I taught 8th grade math, and he literally couldn't even multiply. So I would give him the same tests I gave my special education students. He'd usually fail anyway, but not as bad. Anyhow, he never figured out he was given a different test. When I made the different versions, they were essentially the same questions, just with much easier numbers to work with. Well, one day, I was grading his test, and he missed every single question. Weird thing was, he had all the correct answers to the normal test. However, he showed no work. So there was literally no way with the numbers he had, he could get the answers he got. So I called his mom in. I had to stay like an hour later than normal to meet with her. I presented her the evidence, which most people would find pretty convincing. She just turned to him and said, "Did you cheat?" He of course denies it. Then she looks at me and says, "You say he cheated, he says he didn't, I don't know who to believe." I got up and left right then. Parents are the reason most teachers leave the profession. They tend to make the teacher the enemy quite often. Plus, they don't want to acknowledge that their child can be a little shit. First, I'll tell you the moments when I nearly quit. When a kid with serious mental health issues stabbed another kid with a pencil and I was told to just keep a better eye on him. When a parent complained about me but I wasn't told the nature of the complaint, just reprimanded, generally. When 16-year-old boys hit on me and I actually considered going out drinking with them because I had no social life. But the moment, looking back, was when I was hospitalized with exhaustion, and my amazing boyfriend, who had been coming over, marking tests and proofing papers every evening for months, lay down on the cold hard hospital floor and slept beside me in case I was upset overnight. I realized that I wanted a life with him, not a dull existence where I poured all of myself into my job and had nothing left for us. I loved teaching but it wanted all of me. Dawn till midnight, 7 days a week prepping, marking, planning. I quit. I got a better job. I married that amazing guy and we have an amazing daughter. On weekends we go to the park and play. Walked in on a PE teacher raping a student, fight ensues, cops called, school initially covers it up as two teachers fighting but not over what. Court case had a gag order so basically no one knew other than a dozen or so people. He was out on leave, I was not. Union backed him as he had seniority, they lost anyway but being basically blackballed for being a good person just because I was the new guy. Court case finishes, he goes to prison, I get blamed by the other staff for setting him up because I wanted his job. Mind you, I taught science and chemistry, not exactly the prime candidate for a P class. Staff meeting of how to help students who may have questions or problems about what happened finally getting out turns into a blame session. People were more concerned with having to actually do their jobs than they were with a student being raped on campus and that some kids may have issues with that. I pretty much snapped at that point, burnt every bridge I could, ran down every teacher in the meeting, said a few less than polite things about their professional credentials and personal standing as human beings. That they were treating me like a pariah for being a good person instead of blaming the guy who was balls deep in a 13-year-old girl, told the union rep they can die in a fire for all I care for being a shit-sucking waste of space and walked out. Wrote an open letter to the PTA, the newspaper, and every parent I had contact information for about the entire incident. From start to finish, the public backlash was brutal, union replaced the rep, school board reassigned no small amount of staff and put a handful on leave. Offered me my job back with a bonus but I still told them to duck a cactus, drop mic, walk away. The girl's parents got her counseling with a very good person right away, moved counties and put her in a better run school district. She turned out very well all things considered, graduated with honors, went to law school. Not long ago I was asked by her dean to give a speech at her commencement and hand her a diploma for her LL.M. She's currently working on wrapping up her SJD. I have no doubt she'll be a judge one day. Edit. Was not expecting the comment explosion, or the gold, RIP my inbox but thanks for the kind words, answering comments that I can. Edit 2, based on questions from messages, no I don't still teach public school. I did teach college briefly later on but I've long since been in IT. Not a hero, really I'm an asshole, I'll be the first to admit it, but I'm an asshole who knows right from wrong, and the sad thing is that entails a hero in this day and age. I do like teaching, but I'm not very politically correct so I mentor my staff now rather than teach in a public setting. The pay is a lot better and the stress is a lot lower. Despite username I haven't taught physics or chemistry in over a decade, username was for an unrelated project that never panned out. Avoid Solano County, California. Pepsi, odd course Chio. And but you asked? Lemmy is God. Former teacher in the NYC public schools for 3 years, at the special ed school that is housed in the same building as the shitty charter school that Paul Ryan visited a few weeks ago. The charter school he visited is on the top floor. My school was on the bottom too. We had kids 4 to 15 at the school. Made $39,000 per year plus a bonus of $2,300 for working through the summer, no summer break. 7 principals and 9 assistant principals in the 3 years due to a gang of teachers that thought it was funny to accuse every new administrator of child abuse. Violence was extremely high in the school, both student to student and teacher to student. The police and/or the ambulance was there almost every day. There were absolutely no supplies offered. Not even a pencil. I wrote grants and spent a ton of my own money. The parents were often dangerous. We had the same father come into the school with a gun several times. Yes, we had a security guard at the front door. Apparently that doesn't matter. The guy just walked right in every time. We also had a dad that came in and started punching kindergarteners. I had to come in early every day to knock the cockroaches off the walls so my little kiddos in wheelchairs didn't have to go to school like that. I also often picked up mouse droppings and carcasses and tried my best to clean the floor. You know those big floor buffers they use in the public schools? We never had one of those in the school, so the floors were revolting and dirty. I bought food for my students because the school lunches were so god-awful and I knew that was possibly the only meal they were eating every day. I also bought baby wipes because many of the kids never had showers. I spent a ton of time reporting child abuse, because kids would come in with obvious signs of abuse, footprint on their face, 2 black eyes, half of their braided in hair missing, and also the teachers were abusive. I saw a teacher bite a student. My paraprofessional cut a child's finger off by slamming the door on it, on purpose. Our school psychologist, Lech, was taking kids home over the weekend for therapy. The nail in the coffin was when they had to close the school to disperse the gang of teachers who were accusing the administration of abuse. It's almost impossible to fire a teacher in NYC, so this was the only thing they could do to separate the teachers into different schools, and then I couldn't find another job in a better NYC public school because everyone knew about the reputation of my shitty school. The worst part is that it is normal for District 75 schools, special ed, in NYC. All of my friends who worked in the D75 schools had the same sorts of issues. This wasn't a random occurrence. These D75 schools are dumping grounds for the neediest kids and dumping grounds for the worst NYC teachers, who get transferred there because they can't be fired. These kids often had nobody advocating for them because they were in the foster CR system, their parents were on drugs or abusive, or their caregivers were incarcerated, so they were just stuck in these horrible environments. At some point you decide to save yourself, which is what I did. I'm still traumatized by the entire situation and often worry about the kids I worked with. I became an expert in autism intervention and now work directly with adults with ADHD. 100% would never go back to working in any school. Thanks for listening to another episode of Reddit X. Subscribe and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any stories. Feel free to share your own stories below in the comments. Have a good day.